Chapter 1. Get the defibrillator. Increase the voltage. Doctor. The patient is experiencing massive bleeding, and the A-type blood from the blood bank was just urgently taken away. The intern nurse's hands were covered in blood, and she trembled. The operating room reeked of blood. She had never seen so much blood before. At that moment, a thought flashed through her mind. Who would suddenly take away A-type blood from the blood bank? The woman lying on the bed was pale. Her lips were dry, and her eyes started to lose focus. Juan. What? Juan Nichols. The intern nurse made out the name murmured by Deborah Fraser. Juan Nichols was the most influential businessman in Seymour City. The doctor was on the verge of collapse. He dialed the wrong number 3 times before finally getting it right. He quickly pleaded with the person on the other end of the phone. Mr. Nichols, your wife is experiencing massive bleeding, but the blood from the blood bank has been taken away. Please come and see her for the last time. But Juan's voice was filled with indifference. She's still alive? Call me when she's dead. With that, he hung up the phone. All the light disappeared from Deborah's eyes. Juan, do you hate me so much? Even at this point, you wouldn't come to see me. The machine emitted a flat, cold beep, indicating the patient's vital signs had disappeared. Deborah felt her soul leaving her body. Her withered, frail body collapsed weakly on the bed. Deborah felt exhausted. At just 27, she died from postpartum hemorrhage in the hospital. In her lifetime, she loved Juan dearly. As the only daughter of the Fraser family, she should have enjoyed the best life. But to marry Juan, she sacrificed herself and her family. In the end, she met a tragic fate. Deborah slowly closed her eyes. Given another chance, she would never make the same mistakes. Madam, Mr. Nichols wants to take you to the auction. Which outfit would you like to wear? Sophie asked. Deborah gasped and opened her eyes. Everything in front of her was strikingly familiar. This place was Juan and her home. They had been married for a month, but Juan had rarely visited her. She remembered that Juan was attending a land auction, and due to the occasion, he had to bring his family along. But this was all 5 years ago. How could it be? She thought, deeply confused. Am I reborn? Mr. Nichols has never stayed overnight before. You should seize this opportunity. Sophie's voice brought Deborah back to reality. She picked out a white gown, hesitating. How about this one, madam? Looking at it, Deborah gave a self-deprecating smile. It was well known that Juan favored Shalia. In the past, she often dressed like Shalia to please Juan Miles. Shalia liked white dresses, so she followed suit, just to earn a little favor from Juan. For this auction, Juan didn't inform her of the change in companion, and brought Shalia instead, making her look ridiculous in a white dress similar to Shalia's. The thought of the past made her laugh. No, I'll wear that one, she said, picking up a red dress. Deborah never liked plain clothes. Shalia was just a poor college student. Deborah felt that she must have lost her mind to wear cheap clothes for a man. It only lowered her status and self-esteem. But Mr. Nichols likes white dresses, Sophie said hesitantly. Deborah simply ignored her hints. I'll wear this one, she said. Throw away all those white dresses. I don't like them. Sophie sighed and complied. Deborah looked at herself in the mirror, still vibrant and beautiful. But in a few years, she would be worn down by Juan's torment. Before that happened, she would end it all. In the evening, Deborah appeared in a burgundy dress that accentuated her curves. Her delicate makeup, curls, and a mole under her eye made her mesmerizing. She looked like a painting, untouchable. Not far away, a man in a white shirt and black leather combat boots saw her. With a cigarette dangling from his mouth, Marion Houston asked, Who is she? You don't know her? She's Deborah, the daughter of the Fraser family and Juan's wife, said his friend, Randy Osborne. I just saw Juan entering with another woman. Maybe we'll witness a showdown between the mistress and the wife. It will be fun. Marion made no comments. Randy clicked his tongue. Juan's taste is just terrible, preferring a skinny woman to his beautiful woman. Don't you think? Randy turned around, but Marion was nowhere to be seen. Damn it, he cursed, quickly catching up with Marion. Shalia, in a white dress, held Juan's arm timidly. I've never been to such an event before. Maybe I should go back. You'll get used to it. You'll be attending these events frequently in the future, Juan said. Shalia nodded. Juan was about to enter with Shalia when Joe spoke up. Sir, won't we wait for Mrs. Nichols? Juan frowned. Didn't I ask you to tell her not to come today? Joe glanced at Shalia, and she quickly said, It's not Joe's fault. I told him not to inform Deborah. With my status, I'm afraid of gossip, so I thought it would be better for Deborah to accompany you in. Shalia lowered her head like a scared hare. Juan rubbed his temples. He didn't want Deborah to show up at all. Mr. Nichols, Shalia murmured, biting her lip. It's all right. Juan patted Shalia's head and said to Joe, Go intercept her and send her away. In the crowd, there were murmurs of surprise. Joe looked over and was also shocked. I'm afraid it's too late. Chapter 2. Juan also looked over. A red figure stood out in the crowd. Deborah, clad in a burgundy dress, seemed to captivate hearts with every gesture. Cameras flashed at her like she was a reigning superstar walking the red carpet. Deborah. Juan took a moment to recognize her. In the past, Deborah preferred light makeup and plain dresses. This was the first time Juan had seen her like this. Seeing Deborah for the first time, Shalia was filled with jealousy. Compared to the alluring Deborah, she seemed too plain. Deborah looked stunning. Shalia's tone carried a subtle envy. Deborah spotted them and walked over. Shalia thought Deborah, unaware of her relationship with Juan, would be surprised or awkward. But Deborah was poised and smiling. Mrs. Nichols is here. Who's the lady beside Mr. Nichols? Whispered a reporter. Deborah approached, linking her arm with Juan's, and extended a hand towards Shalia. You must be Shalia mentioned by Juan. Nice to meet you. I'm Deborah. You can call me Mrs. Nichols. Shalia withdrew her hand from Juan's and shook hands with Deborah. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Nichols, Shalia said awkwardly. Juan told me that he sponsored you. You're going to study abroad, right? Deborah said. Shalia glanced at Juan. Shalia excels in her studies. She's planning to go abroad this year, but she's a bit timid, so I brought her here today to broaden her horizons, Juan said. He had brought Shalia here to see the world of the upper class. Juan hadn't completely fallen for Shalia yet. It was only after Shalia returned from abroad that Juan fell in love with her. Even so, Juan attended all kinds of events with Shalia, to the point where everyone in Seymour City knew that Juan liked a college girl. But none of this mattered to Deborah anymore. She came to the auction not to compete with Shalia but for a more important purpose. Well then, take good care of Miss Miles. I'm going in, Deborah said, letting go of Juan's arm. Juan was stunned. He hadn't expected these words to come from Deborah's mouth. By the time he realized it, Deborah had already entered the venue. Juan frowned. When did the unruly Deborah become so agreeable? Deborah sat in an inconspicuous corner. The auction venue was filled with influential figures. If she remembered correctly, an abandoned piece of land that nobody wanted was bought by an obscure merchant at this auction. Later, because of the upscale developments around it, the land became valuable. The successful investment elevated the merchant's status, making him a commercial magnate. Since she had decided to leave Juan, Deborah wanted to build up her own assets. After sitting down, Juan searched for Deborah's figure. Beside him, Shalia asked, Mr. Nichols, do you really want me to bid on your behalf? Juan's attention returned and he said, Yes, I trust your judgment. Shalia blushed. She had studied finance for so long at school just for this day. On the second floor, Deborah watched them chat happily. Shalia indeed had some talent, which was one of the reasons why Juan would be attracted to her. In her last life, Shalia had once identified a prime piece of land, which impressed Juan. But that piece of land was valuable to begin with. The Nichols Group's properties were around it, and Shalia inflated the price with Juan's money. In the end, the value of the land and the surrounding properties all increased, so Juan couldn't lose. Even without Shalia, Juan would have secured that piece of land. As the auction started, Shalia began to bid. She successfully won the first 3 prime pieces of land. Juan sat beside Shalia like a guardian. The price of Crescent Manor starts at $1 billion. $2 billion. Deborah's bidding caused a collective gasp. Juan frowned. What's gotten into this woman? Shalia whispered. This piece of land isn't worth much. Deborah's going to lose money. Juan texted Deborah. What the hell are you doing? Deborah read the message and ignored it. 2 billion once. 2 billion twice. Is Deborah crazy? 2 billion for this piece of junk. On the second floor, Randy was flabbergasted. 3 billion, Marion bid. Randy nearly flipped the table. Marion, are you insane too? Across from them, Deborah frowned. She wanted to know who was crazy enough to compete with her for this wasteland, only to see Marion. She vaguely remembered Marion was doing gray business. When did he start real estate development? 4 billion. Deborah raised the stakes. Downstairs, Juan furrowed his brow and texted her again. Deborah, shut up. Deborah simply turned off her phone. 5 billion, Marion said. His provocation annoyed Deborah. All right, you want to play? Let's play. 10 billion, she bid. Damn. She's gone mad. Randy exclaimed. Juan stood up, losing his composure. He couldn't quite grasp Deborah's intentions. To him, this piece of land wasn't even worth $1 billion. Yet Deborah was offering 10 billion. Marion smiled at Deborah and made a gesture of concession. 10 billion. The auctioneer exclaimed. Any further bids? 10 billion going once, going twice. Sold. As the gavel fell, a weight lifted off Deborah's heart. The land was finally hers, but she had unnecessarily spent an extra $8 billion. It was all because of Marion. She glared at him. Randy nudged Marion. Hey, Deborah's glaring at you. If I were her, I'd probably be plotting your demise. Marion shrugged indifferently. Downstairs, Shalia tugged at Juan. Mr. Nichols, Deborah is going to make you bankrupt. She set her own price. No one will help her pay the bills, Juan said. Chapter 3. Due to this episode, Juan's attention was solely on Deborah. Shalia's performance was completely ignored. When the auction ended, Deborah was about to leave when she bumped into Juan and Shalia. Deborah, if you don't understand real estate, don't mess around, Juan said bluntly. Shalia chimed in. Yeah, Deborah. Your actions have cost Mr. Nichols $10 billion. Deborah chuckled. Miss Miles, you misunderstand. This piece of land is mine to buy. What does it have to do with Juan? Shalia blurted out. But that's $10 billion. It's just pocket change for me, not to mention for her. From not far away, Randy's voice came. Isn't that right, Miss Fraser? Deborah caught sight of Marion and said. It's just a plaything for purchase. Shalia blushed with embarrassment. $10 billion meant nothing to Juan and Deborah. In front of these people, Shalia felt inferior. Heard Mr. Nichols got married. Is the lady beside him Mrs. Nichols? Marion chimed in. Shalia blushed, stammering. And no. This is my wife, Deborah, Juan said, pulling Deborah close. Deborah tried to shake off Juan's hand, but he held on tight. Since earlier, he had felt Marion's gaze on Deborah. Men understood men best. He could see through Marion's thoughts. So Miss Fraser is Mrs. Nichols. It's my bad. I saw Mr. Nichols chatting with this lady in the venue earlier, thinking she was Mrs. Nichols. Randy slapped his head. Then this lady must be Mr. Nichols's secretary. No wonder she was holding up signs for Mr. Nichols earlier. Deborah almost burst out laughing, though she didn't care about Shalia and Juan anymore. Hearing Randy's words still made her pleased. Shalia was totally embarrassed. Joe, take Shalia home, Juan ordered. Yes, sir, Joe agreed. Randy grinned. We'll get out of your hair. Bye. After Randy and Marion left, Deborah shook off Juan's hand. Had enough. Juan didn't expect Deborah to pull away. Before, Deborah couldn't wait to touch him. She seemed different tonight. If you're trying to get my attention, you don't need to do this, Juan said. Deborah was speechless. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the right words. Considering how much she cared about Juan in the past, she might have done so. But she wasn't that person anymore. Whatever. Deborah shrugged. Wait. Juan stopped her. What now? What's your relationship with Marion? I don't even know him. Juan spoke coldly. No matter what your relationship is with him, you are Mrs. Nichols in public. You better watch your identity and keep your distance from other men. Deborah scoffed. Before you demand anything from others, how about demanding it from yourself? Did you consider your status and my reputation when you brought Shalia here today? I had Joe inform you today. Oh? Is it to tell me not to come? Juan remained silent. He knew he was in the wrong. Even Marion, an outsider, mistook Shalia for Mrs. Nichols. "If you like her, let's get a divorce," Deborah said. "Did you get up on the wrong side of the bed?"
Juan frowned.
Although he didn't love Deborah, it didn't mean he wanted a divorce. Their marriage was based on interests. It was not something one person could dissolve. From Juan's serious expression, Deborah could tell that he wasn't thinking of divorce now, but it was only because of her family. In a few years, when she became worthless, he would discard her like trash. Thinking of the miserable end of her last life, she'd rather end it now than wait for that moment. "I said let's divorce." The next day, news of Deborah's extravagant purchase of wasteland swept through major platforms. Deborah was the sole heiress to the Fraser family, and $10 billion was just a figure for her. However, with her family's businesses operating, she had limited liquid assets. It was not easy for her to raise the money. Deborah lay on the bed rubbing her brows. "Should I find Juan?"
No.
"He left without a word yesterday when she proposed a divorce." She couldn't understand. She was even willing to relinquish the Fraser family's wealth to him, yet he still didn't want a divorce. But besides Juan, who else could she turn to? Suddenly Deborah sat up. She had an idea. Marion. People in high society were in one circle. Deborah managed to contact Marion through her connections. Deborah remembered that Marion's influence was overseas, but in recent years, he had stationed himself in Seymour City. Others might not know why, but she did. In the coming years, Marion would rapidly take over local enterprises, competing head-to-head with Juan. In the conference room, Marion played with his lighter. Deborah got straight to the point. "I want to borrow $8 billion from you." Randy spat out his tea. He'd seen straightforward, but never this blunt. "Miss Fraser, that's a large amount of money." Deborah blinked. "Last time you said $10 billion was nothing. I just rolled the logs for you, and you're giving me a hard time." Randy shook his head. Beautiful women were always a bit sick in their heads. Marion flicked his lighter. "Why should I lend you any money? I could have secured Crescent Manor with $2 billion, but because of your meddling, I have to pay an extra." Not a convincing reason. Deborah fell silent for a moment before saying, "Your industries are all overseas, but for the past 2 years you've been frequenting Seymour City. I guess you want to launder your overseas money here. Am I right?" Randy paused his tea-drinking motion, subconsciously glancing at Marion. He didn't expect Deborah to understand these things. Chapter 4. The room fell silent for a moment. Marion smirked and said, "Mrs. Nichols, you can't wrongly accuse good people." "Yeah, we're all legitimate businessmen," Randy chimed in. "In the realm of legitimate business, it's not up to me to judge. But I think one might be interested," Deborah said. "I'm just a clueless rich girl, while one isn't. If I tell him what happened, I wonder if he'll take notice." "You're sneaky." Randy couldn't contain his frustration. Deborah looked at Marion seriously. "Lend me $8 billion, and I'll pay you back with interest in 3 years." Randy's eyes widened. "Are you kidding? Do you know how much interest that'll be? If you can't pay it back, we'll lose $8 billion. You're Juan's wife. Who can hold you accountable?" "I know the interest. I'll sign a contract with you. If I can't repay, I'll give you my family's properties and stocks, and I'll work for you for the rest of my life." Randy paused and continued. "And besides, my marriage with Juan might not last 3 years. Even if I'm still his wife, then he won't protect me." Marion looked up and stared at Deborah for a while. Randy's ears perked up as he smelled gossip. But he quickly composed himself. "No, I disagree." But Marion agreed. "Okay, I'll lend it to you." "What?" Randy jumped up from his chair. "Have you gone mad? I'll have the finance department transfer the money to you. We'll draft the contract later," Marion said. "Marion." "Damn." Randy stomped his foot. "Thank you, Mr. Houston." Deborah stood up, saying, "I'll await your message. Happy cooperation." She smiled and left the office. Randy ground his teeth. "That's $8 billion. Are you out of your mind? She's Juan's wife. Why would you lend her money?" Marion grinned. "She's pretty." "Damn it. Why should you get the girl while I pay?" Randy exclaimed. Marion stood up, slapped a bank card on Randy's chest and said, "I pursue the woman I fancy. It's only right that I foot the bill. What? Foot the bill? She's Juan's wife. What bill are you talking about? Randy ranted. Ignoring his protest, Marion walked out of the office. Both of you are insane, Randy muttered. Deborah had just stepped into the Nichols family's mansion when she saw Juan sitting in the living room. She frowned. In her last life, Juan rarely came home. When did he become so attached to home? Assuming he was just lounging around, she turned to go upstairs. Deborah. Juan called out. Deborah halted. What is it? Juan felt uneasy about Deborah's recent coldness. The auction house is pressing for payment. I know, Deborah replied coolly. If you don't have enough money, you can tell me, Juan said. No need. I've sorted it out, Deborah said dismissively. Where did you get the money from? $10 billion wasn't a small amount, and Juan knew every movable asset under the Fraser family's name. She couldn't produce such a sum on short notice. It's my business. You don't need to concern yourself, Deborah replied. Don't forget that I'm your husband, Juan said. Deborah chuckled bitterly. Husband. Juan always considered it a disgrace. When did he remember he was her husband? You're so anxious because you're afraid I'll lose money and drag down the Nichols family, Deborah said. Juan fell silent. Seeing his reaction, Deborah knew that she had guessed right. I won't drag you down. I understand our marriage is a business alliance. We rise and fall together. You don't have to come home often, Deborah concluded. Juan was speechless. He used to think that way, so after getting married, he was cold towards Deborah and didn't even touch her. But after hearing those words from Deborah, he suddenly realized his excessiveness. Juan was about to say something when suddenly a remittance message came on Deborah's phone. She didn't expect Marion's actions to be so fast. In just an hour, the money arrived. With the matter resolved, Deborah gave a smile. Juan pursed his lips, suddenly remembering how Deborah used to follow him. She showed him the same smile, but he never cared. There's a party tonight. You're coming with me. Me. Deborah frowned. Juan asked. Don't want to. Why don't you bring Shalia with you? Deborah was puzzled. In her last life, whenever there was a banquet, Juan would take Shalia. If her memory served her right, it was an international banquet that night. She insisted on going, but Juan brought Shalia in the end, indirectly paving the way for Shalia. For such an important occasion, why would Juan suddenly think of bringing her? You're my wife, so naturally, you should come to such occasions with me. Deborah didn't buy it, thinking it was only because Shalia had something else to do. Then again, she should go to such occasions more often. To start her own business, she needed connections. All right then, I'll go get ready. Juan breathed a sigh of relief. At least, Deborah was still willing to be the nominal Mrs. Nichols. Perhaps she wasn't completely disappointed with him yet. Shalia was in the dormitory, arranging the dress sent by Juan's secretary. Her roommates looked at Shalia with envy. Shalia, your boyfriend is so sweet, giving you such a beautiful dress. Shalia's cheeks turned rosy. Shalia, when will you introduce us to your boyfriend? Yeah, your boyfriend is so rich, and he takes you to various banquets all the time. We're curious. Shalia shook her head and said he's very busy. I'll introduce you to him when he's free. Shalia's phone rang. Seeing that it was a call from Juan's secretary, she answered the phone happily. Joe, did Mr. Nichols send you to pick me up? I'll come down right away, she said. Mr. Nichols said you don't need to come today, said Joe.